All right, excellent. Welcome, 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 one and all. Okay. Emery, I'm going to make you a co-presenter.
Thank you, sir. I will try to keep an eye on the chat.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Welcome.
And I'm going to get the PowerPoint rolling here and share my screen if I can find the controls. This is what always happens with Zoom. I love it. Let me share my screen. Okay, great. I think we're in business now. Okay, awesome. Emery, can you see my initial slide?
I definitely can. I don't think you've got me on as co-host yet, though.
It's weird. I went ahead and clicked that button.
Okay.
So,
But
okay.
yeah, I can totally see your screen. Looks great.
Okay, great. Awesome. All right. Welcome everyone tonight to the College Inroads monthly webinar. We host a monthly webinar each month, one to connect with our clients, but also to provide information. Just as a little bit of background, these usually are pretty short, 15, 20, 30 minutes worth of material to go through. And when it's all said and done, you can certainly ask any questions that you might like to ask about researching schools or tools that are available. But what happens a lot of times is that folks have other questions too, which have perhaps nothing to do with the topic for tonight, and that's completely okay. Um, we are in a meeting format, so if I could ask everyone to mute themselves just so we don't have any background noise during the presentation, that'd be much appreciated. Additionally, we don't have tons and tons of folks, so if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question in the middle of the presentation, feel free to do that. If you prefer to go to the chat function and ask any questions that you might have in the chat, that's completely fine too. And as you heard, Anne-Marie is going to try to monitor that for us as we go through. So with that being said, what are we going to talk about this evening? The first thing I really want to talk about is the importance of completing in-depth research on the college list. And I wish I could shout this from the tops of trees, buildings. I want everyone to know it's so important to research the schools list, mainly because what is happening, and I'm sure everyone is aware of this and has seen this on the news, is that colleges have become a lot more nuanced, a lot more competitive in screening their applicants in recent years. And so to differentiate yourself, to show them hey, I've actually done the research required to know why I am a good fit for your institution. That's the reason why this research is really required in the proximate sense. In the strategic sense, it's really important for your student to do the research so they know what they're getting into when they apply and get into Emory or to Duke or to Texas Christian or wherever it is. Number two, we're going to talk about some tools and give some encouragement to dive deeper than other students. And then also to be able to answer the why me? In other words, why are you applying to my college supplemental essay, which is super popular. And those are the things that I think are the crux of our message for tonight. For the class of 25, there's an incomplete list of to-dos. I like to start this off as a little bit of housekeeping, so to speak. If you have been on with us for a while and you're a junior, almost a senior now, your college research probably is already in progress. If you've had a college search meeting with your educational consultant, you've been given a list of schools, you have a portal, you've got links, you've got all sorts of things that we'll look at today to help you in that process. But definitely, for most people who've been with us for a while, our goal is to have your student down to the last, 8 to 10 schools that they're really considering by the end of this semester or maybe into the first part of the summer. What we want to avoid is having people procrastinating on their research and on their college list so that they're selecting schools in like September or October. That's actually prime time for getting your applications all sewn up. So we're going to be doing a lot of work over the summer on applications. So those college lists should definitely be firming up. College visits. I think that's a really important element to actually researching a school, because colleges may look one way online. Their dorms certainly look a certain way through virtual tours and things like that, but actually getting to campus. And I know, gang, that's hard. I mean, we're all really busy professionals, really busy students, and it's hard to stave off that time to be able to actually get to campuses and see what's going on. But after the pandemic, I saw really a lot of families saying, hey, we're not even going to touch college tours, because of the pandemic. And then even afterwards, it was like, well, we kind of gotten out of practice of doing that. And I heard a lot of parents saying, hey, we're not going to visit schools until we actually know where we've been admitted. And that's fine. But I feel like in this research phase, actually setting foot on campus can be very helpful in formulating those impressions that are going to be helpful for your educational consultants. So, for example, if someone comes after I've generated a college list from a student saying, hey, I actually went to Belmont in Tennessee and I really loved these three things about the school. Can you find other schools like Belmont for me? Absolutely. That's very helpful. And we can start really doing some other targeted updates on the schools list. Teacher recommendation letters. A lot of students who are juniors right now are definitely identifying. They're not really having their teachers or outside recommenders write the recommendations at this stage. That's a little early, premature. But getting commitments from them to actually write those letters at this stage is very helpful. What we find is that after spring break of the junior year, the space-time continuum somehow just accelerates. It just across the board, we have APs, we have end of semester stuff, we have lots of things that are in planning for the summer. And yeah, it gets hectic. And one of the things that people forget to do is line up those recommendation people. And that's all we're looking for, is someone to say, yes, Johnny, I can write a strong recommendation letter for you. And a word of the wise, I always think it's nice to grab that person's email address so that over the summer, as Anne-Marie and her team take the students through their applications, you can actually put that email into the Common App and get those those started over the summer and not have to wait until fall. Essay work. Yeah, that seems bizarre, I'm sure, to most parents, but every year we like to talk with our students who are graduating. And last year when Anne-Marie went through and did the exit interviews with the students, one of the most common responses that we received from the class of 24 was that they wished they had started their essays way earlier. So I just got off a meeting with a student where we brainstormed that person's Common App core essay, and they're going to have 2 weeks to write their first draft, et cetera, et cetera. So I know a lot of you guys are working on that with your educational consultant right now. That's fruitful work. It is something that is, well advised to do early. It is the longest poll in the application process are those essays. So one thing, I'll just mention this, and I know we'll get on to our material for the evening, but the Common App, the core essays are 500 to 650 words in length. We already know what those prompts are. They're not changing from last year. So that's kind of what we're working with. Those of us who are applying to UT and Texas A&M, in the years past, they have used what's called the Tell Us Your Story essay. That's a holdover from the Apply Texas application. If you're applying to either one of those schools, our recommendation is to write that essay with the brainstorming advice of your educational consultant. So no worries there. What is variable and what will change in many cases are the supplemental essays that come once the Common App is actually opened on August 1st. So we don't know what those are. Colleges are usually pretty, they hold those close to the vest until August 1st. Okay, SAT, ACT, definitely. I know a lot of folks are thinking about doing either the May or June SAT or a summertime ACT or the April ACT for that matter. So prepping and studying for those and also getting ready for the AP exams, which are coming up in a couple of weeks. I know all of that is happening. So yeah, it's busy and it's going to get busier as the summer goes on. Okay. So let's dive in. Why even bother researching the schools, the cons? Let's look at the pros and cons list. It takes time and effort. We just outlined a lot of stuff that's happening for students and their families. It also, like, for example, I'm not going to name names, but even helping students do college research, sometimes it's challenging for me because when I go to some colleges' websites, some of them are very difficult to actually navigate. And that can be problematic if we're not patient. Or we might judge a book by the cover. And so that's always not always the best thing to do. But I do understand when students tell me, man, some of these colleges' websites are just really tough to get through. Good news is that most colleges' websites follow a fairly standard template, so to speak. I'm super busy. I also know that XYZ school is an excellent fit for me already. Okay, that's good. I'm so glad that we have that insight. But also, if it's a competitive school, we really do need to dive into things like the course catalog, to look and see, hey, what kinds of electives might I actually really like as a future junior or senior in college, let's say. Hey, it's really a messy, confusing, nonlinear situation. I'm just going to go straight to the rankings and let that inform my college list. Well, caution on that because most of the data that goes into the rankings, whether it's Kiplinger's or US News or World Report or whatever, is self-reported. You know, a lot of people don't talk about that, but that is the truth. And I don't know what they say. What is there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? So yeah, a lot of that is just statistical data that is being worked over. So the pros of doing research is definitely that we can find some unique things about the school that applies to us. Perhaps it's a study abroad program that no one else has, or something like that. That is a great thing to be commenting on, especially if we have one of the supplemental essays that are asking, hey, why are you applying to my school? Um, we definitely will get to understand the college's programming a lot better. And sometimes that helps us when we start cross-comparing. Hey, what's the difference between Arkansas and Auburn or Bama and UNC Chapel Hill or something? So the idea is that as we dive into the research, we get a lot better at researching as well. And it helps the student sometimes solidify the things that are actually the most important things to them. And it can cause, in some cases, a student to either question or confirm the college's fit. All are really good reasons to do the research from a big, strategic picture. So it begs the question, though, what are the colleges looking for in a student? What are the most important things that we're going to be judged on? The rigor in our curriculum, the grade point average that we earn, the SAT and ACT that's actually consistent with the GPA score. And as you guys have seen, I'm sure in the last few weeks, a lot of schools are starting to return to requiring SATs and ACTs. And once we saw Harvard make that switch, I would be willing to bet there's going to be an avalanche of other schools that make similar decisions. And UT is also one of those that has gone back to requiring SATs and ACTs. So involvement in activities, well-written essays, leadership initiative, diversity, all these things are super important to the college for them to meet their requirements. So they're just recruiting these attributes, and those can sometimes come through on the essays. So what should I do to research the schools? From a top-down perspective is, usually what I tell people. We want to take the college and the data that we have and look at it from a really big picture view and start to funnel that down into the micro view. Okay, so the strategic view first. I tell students, hey, talk with your parents about the finance plan. I think that's a really important first place to begin. Most families don't talk about the finances, quite honestly. If they do, it's in general terms. But if I'm talking to a lot of parents tonight, I'm going to encourage you guys to have that sometimes tough discussion with your student about, hey, here's what the budget looks like. This is kind of our parameters. This is what we can do. And a lot of times that will also help in the researching of schools so we can narrow down colleges that are just going to be out of the realm of possibility for us. Believe it or not, we're starting to see colleges that are barking up the $100,000 a year tree. I mean, there are some that are $93,000. Next year, they're probably going to be $100,000 a year. So yeah, it's out there. Review the data in the College Inroads portal. If we have a few minutes at the end, I'm going to go through the portal and just show you what some of the tools look like. One of the tools is the Fisk Guide, which if you're not familiar with Fisk, it is a phenomenally good, it's actually a giant tome of a book if you looked at it in paper, but they give guides for many hundreds and hundreds of four-year schools around the country. And it's very digestible. It's very easy to see. It's a very big picture. But I've seen a lot of students kind of go through the Fisk Guide for the first time and go, wow, that's really a lot of good information. And you know what? This doesn't sound like a really good fit for me. Okay, great. You know, you don't have to go a whole lot farther from that if that's the case. A lot of times, though, I'll have students will say, yeah, this sounds great. I really was intrigued by what I heard. Okay, now we can go down a little bit further in the funnel with that school. The next thing I like to do is look at niche. Niche is just a regular website that has profile data for every single school in the country, including the rankings and things of that nature. But what I love about niche so much is that it has a scatter plot. Some of us go to high schools where Naviance is the counseling portal and program that is being used. And Naviance gives a very nice scatter plot as well, but it's only for Westlake, for example. It doesn't show thousands and thousands of other students from all over the country. So Niche has that, which I think is very helpful. All you have to do, you have to sign up for like a free account, and then you could put your specific SAT, ACT data in the system, and it'll show you in relation to other people, whether you might get in or not. Even down to if you're in-state or out-of-state or per major in some cases. The niche system also has reviews, which I don't know about you, when I go traveling, I look at Yelp, I look at TripAdvisor, all these different places to find out what are other people saying about these things that I'm looking for at my destination. And that's the same with college. So I really appreciate looking at some of those reviews. Definitely, you're going to get a list of target/suspect colleges from your consultant. So you're going to want to look at those. And then also, one of the things that students don't often look at least in my experience, is that once they go to the college's website, they don't really look at the mission of the school or what the college is kind of selling, so to speak, into the marketplace. Sometimes it's helpful to get, especially as I start to write essays, is to have some sort of kind of empathy with what the colleges are really trying to do at their institution. Now, if we go down into the tactical view, into the nubbins, so to speak, at the bottom of the funnel, this is when we're going to want to go to the website, not only just of the school, but of the program/major that I'm looking for. So I'm looking at special programs. I'm really looking at the curriculum. How many hours am I going to have to take of specific courses? Are there a lot of prerequisites? I might want to look at the professors that are on staff in the department. Hey, am I going to be able to do like undergraduate types of research? You know, these are the kinds of places when you're down into the weeds where if I was a student, I'd start writing down questions about the school that maybe they're not being answered on the website. And hint, second bullet point, looking at the admissions webpage, you're going to want to find your admissions counselor, you know, and the admissions counselor, every school's got them. Those are the kinds of people that you really want to pose these questions to, like, hey, I was looking at this one particular, you know, opportunity that, you know, is presented on the engineering webpage. You know, how does someone get in line for that sort of opportunity? You know, that's a great thing to be in touch with admissions on, because they're going to be looking at, in some cases, demonstrating interest. And all of us have probably heard that, you know, getting in contact with the school at some point during the admissions process is actually pretty important in a lot of ways. So looking at the admissions webpage, so you're going to want to look at your admissions counselor, be in touch with that person if necessary. Looking to see, hey, what kinds of applications are they accepting? Is it Common App? Do I have to do like their own application like MIT? You know, those sorts of things. What kinds of deadlines? And the deadlines also are going to talk about the types of applications in terms of, is it early action, early decision, single choice early action? Is it rolling admissions? All of those types of applications, they're going to be listed there on the admissions webpage. And then you'll want to decide how I'm going to apply. Well, that again could be a discussion with the parents about early decision, early action, for example. And early decision is a binding contract. That's the one where if you apply ED and you get accepted, then you're bound to that school. You got to go. And so there's some definite pros and cons to early decision. Um, Review the student life section of the website. I usually spend a lot of time there with students when I'm doing research meetings with them, because that's where they're going to look at clubs and activities, Greek life, sports, the housing situation, what are the dining options, what's the social scene kind of look like. That's I mean, for me as a student, if I'm going to college, I want to look at that. I want to know what's happening on campus. Other people will go further and they'll look at YouTube and look at, self-generated videos by students and things like that. That's all good and fine as well. The career development section of the college's website, that's helpful to see, hey, who's coming to recruit at the college or in this division or department. Doing a virtual tour, I think, is also super nice, because, again, you're going to see their marketing points. They're going to be talking about what differentiates them from other schools. Like if I'm looking at a business program, for example, they're definitely going to be talking about how they're different from other business undergraduate programs. And then there may be other people that you want to talk to, like admissions, students, alumni, folks like that, to kind of get the sense of what's life like on campus. The other day, a student set up a meeting with me to talk about what was it like to go to a military academy. And that's great, because most people are not necessarily going to have that kind of knowledge unless you've been to a place like that. So alumni can also be really helpful. Financial aid webpage, even though if we're not going to qualify for need-based financial aid, I think it's nice to go to the financial aid webpage, because every single college has a net price calculator on their financial aid webpage. You can also look at it from the College Inroads portal as well, but that's helpful for people who are looking at high-priced colleges. You can look and see, hey, how many dollars am I really going to spend on the bottom line at this particular school? And then lastly, do an in-person visit. There's a checklist within the student's portal that helps you go through a very complete college in-person visit. There's also a treasure hunt, and we assign this to the student. The educational consultant will give that to the kiddo after they do the research meeting. It's in the files section. Student usually has a couple weeks to do this type of research. When they turn the work, there's a nice little reward for him or her. So I'm not going to spoil the prize, but there is that. So also people are asking, hey, what are the chances of admission? So as I start to review all of this data, I'm going to look at my own SAT and ACT data. And one of the things that we've been consistent as a company in is encouraging people, even through test optional times, take the SAT and ACT. It's not going to hurt. We need to see that data. Are we in the upper quarter of the applicant pool with our SAT, ACT data? If that's the case, yeah, we're putting ourselves in a pretty good chance for getting in. We also are probably helping ourselves in great way when it comes to merit aid as well. Is my GPA data above the upper 50 percentile marker? That's really important. I've had colleges admissions reps tell me, hey, if you're third quarter, your chances of gaining acceptance with your GPA is really low. Okay, and that's just some schools. It's not every school. Take a look at the acceptance rate of the college. That's really important. I had a student meeting today where the student said, yeah, I think, getting into this one school will be pretty easy for me because it has a very high acceptance rate. This other one I'm looking at, pretty low chance of me getting in. And it's just tied to acceptance rates. And that can be very helpful to look at. Those are on the portal. Take a look at the enrollment yield of the college. That is simply the number of students that actually filled seats divided by those numbers of students who gained acceptance. And that's usually a pretty low number. It's usually like 20%, 15% for private schools, maybe a little higher. Harvard's enrollment yield is only 80%. So a full 20% of students that were accepted at Harvard don't actually show up. They go someplace else, which is crazy to think about. We talked about the scatter plot on niche already. Compare the acceptance rates for ED versus EA. EA is early action versus regular admissions. And the website I have listed here, College Transitions, that group keeps a listing of up-to-date early decision versus early action acceptance rates for many, many popular schools. So a lot of people think, oh, if I apply early decision, I automatically have a bump in terms of getting accepted. Sometimes that's a little bump or non-existent bump. Sometimes that's a huge advantage to do early decisions. So depending on your financial situation, depending on how high up that school is in the pecking order for you, I definitely recommend that list. Okay, college visits, do the research. We talked about that on the previous page. You definitely want to go into an information session. Take a physical tour of campus with a trained tour guide. Get all of the questions answered in the info session or on tour or with an admissions rep if you can score an interview. Interviews, by the way, guys, are really rare in this day and age, but some smaller private institutions will allow it. If you could speak with a professor in the discipline that you're looking at, great. Attend a class if you can do that. If you're an athlete, work out with a team. Definitely look at the outside community and evaluate that and take notes, because chances are it's going to be a few moans before you actually make a decision. You may need to go back to those notes. So we talked a little bit about a demonstration of interest earlier. Bonus points for you if you attend the college fair and drop your name in the hat, or you get your barcodes scanned by the school. Attend the at-school college presentation. I talked with a student last week who said, yeah, I had a really long conversation with my admissions rep for this particular school, and there's only like two other high school students that were with me. It was great. Chances are that admissions rep is going to remember that student. Follow up with the admissions reps. Again, any questions that you have from research you want to pose to them. Sign up for more information on the college's website. Seems counterproductive because none of us want more email, but in some cases colleges data mine that. Responding to the emails that they send can also send a signal that you're interested. Applying early in the cycle, applying early action or early decision are also good tips. So there's always questions. So I'm just going to open it for questions, and then I will give everyone a quick tour of the Inroads website. So any questions?
Mike, Sheila just popped a question into the chat. Can you elaborate on college fairs? When do
Oh,
they
yeah.
happen?
Yeah, usually in the fall, you're going to see a rash of college fairs. Usually admissions reps have a cycle like from the summer into the fall where they travel, and they'll spend weeks and weeks away from the university. And what they're doing is they're identifying high schools and school districts that are going to be the most, I don't know, profitable for them, I guess is probably the best way of putting it. Admissions reps, by the way, talk about markets. So they're definitely sales agents in a lot of ways. They're kind of not the gatekeepers of days of old. But anyway, yeah. So typically, many high schools will host college fairs, and there might be anywhere from 50 to 150 colleges represented at the fair. So it tends to be a bit of a free for all. There's a lot of people there, and there's a lot of talking and back and forth. But the idea is to present yourself. You don't have to do an interview. It's not all that serious. It's about gathering data and information, making connections with the admissions reps, getting business cards, or getting connected with them on social and things like that, so that if questions arise, you've got someone from the school to actually reach out to. And I've found most admissions reps are very approachable. I have lots of friends who are admissions reps, and I'm able to ask questions behind the scenes. So I think that's an important thing for the students to do, especially for their top choice schools. If you're able to do it, if you're able to spend the time there, that's great. I've had a lot of people say, hey, I can't do it. We're way too engaged with lots and lots of other activities. That's probably okay too, because the best representation of the school is actually not in a gymnasium at a high school. It's actually on campus, going to visit the campus. That's my own estimation. Hopefully that answers the question.
Another question came in. What kind of questions are you allowed to ask when you're interviewing with an admissions rep?
Oh, good question. These are, as a matter of fact, when you interview with an admissions rep, you're able to ask any question you want. That's the short answer. But I've told all the students that I work with that if they get in line for an admissions interview, let us know in advance and we'll do interview prep with your student. And part of that interview prep is to source 5 or 10 really good questions that are personal to the student that are not obvious on the website. So some of those could be like, hey, which kind of companies, if I'm a business major, let's say, which schools or which companies come to recruit. Some colleges put that on the websites, a lot don't. Um, hey, what's a great piece of advice that you would give a freshman that isn't, common knowledge for your school? Great. How is your business program different from others? Those sorts of questions are out there. And some are hard questions for them to answer. And sometimes the admissions reps will come back and say, hey, you know what? I know the right person to ask. Let me get in touch with Professor Jones or whatever, and she'll answer that question for you. So yeah, that's a great question. It's going to be custom to your student, really.
Another question, what's the difference between ED and EA?
Okay, great question. Thank you for asking. Early action is non-binding. What that basically means is that we apply typically by an early deadline. We're talking November 1st, maybe November 15th, but the most common early action deadline is November 1st. What it typically means is that you get an early read, and they package up everyone who applies early action. And then what they do is they give everyone who's EA a decision, typically by mid-December, maybe by the end of December. So that's all that is. It's just an early read of the app and an early response. Early decision is a binding contract. So you, as a parent, the student, sign a contract as well, I think, as the guidance counselor at the high school. So everyone signs a contract saying, hey, I'm applying early decision. I understand if I'm granted acceptance, I have to retract all of my other applications that are out to other schools, and then I will attend and matriculate to your college. So that's the difference between early action and early decision, is the contractual binding nature of early decision.
Those are all the
Great.
questions from Chad.
Okay, other questions that may be on people's minds. Okay, if I don't hear any, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a minute. I'm going to reduce the PowerPoint here and share a
One other
different.
question that just came in, how do we reach out to admissions reps?
Oh, great. Okay. So, you know what I do, gang? This is a bit of a secret because I hate to say this, most colleges don't make this data super easy to find on the admissions webpage. Honestly, even if I'm on the college's website, I'll open up a new tab and I'll just type in Colorado College admissions rep, and hit that. And it'll usually take us to a map of the United States. And then you can click on Texas and it'll tell you who it is. Or you might have to scroll down a list of names, and each person it'll list their territories that they cover. So great question. Okay, so I'm going to share Joe Doe here. Anne-Marie, okay, yeah. So sorry, I'm having to look over at my auxiliary monitor here, but I'm going to take us into our fictitious student Joe Doe's My List of Schools. And so Joe has put Clemson, TCU, Vassar, Trinity, whole mishmash of schools here on the list. So I'm going to pick on Trinity University for tonight. And most of you parents have seen this, but if you haven't, this is the initial top of the funnel that we were talking about earlier. So you could look at notes, all of the different majors, whether it's, at a bachelor's level or a master's or doctoral, all those things. But the FIS guide, like I was talking about here, that 50,000-foot view of what the school has to offer, including some, nice specific things about the school, and, overlaps. People who apply to Trinity often apply to Rice, strongest programs to the right of the page, things like that. If you're really, really a glutton for punishment and you want to look ahead at the essays that were asked last year by Trinity, you could hit this essay tab. I'm going to go ahead and just go back to stats here. So we can see here pretty quickly, 30% of students who apply to Trinity gain acceptance. So a lot of people are like, wow, Trinity is a tiny school. There's 2,200 students, and yet they only have a 30% acceptance rate. Yeah, that's right. 657 actually enrolled out of 3,497 that were admitted. So 657 divided by 3,497, their enrollment yield is 18.7%. So 1 out of 5 students actually attends after being accepted. Here's their undergraduate enrollment. You can say a little bit about the student body. Joe's looking really good compared to other students at Trinity in terms of the SAT. So we're positioned into the upper quarter. That looks really nice. His GPA is 101. Yeah, so these are weighted GPAs. And, this student's in the upper 60 percentile of students that gained acceptance. Here's the cost of attendance. It's a private school, so it's not going to show you an in-state or out-of-state rate. The average family that had over $110,000 of income paid net price $33,870. But one of the things up here you could do is go to the net price calculator right off of the Inroads webpage here. So that's nice. You could also link directly over to the college's website. So that's great. And there's this research button here that includes niche and a whole bunch of other websites. I usually with the students, I'm covering niche more than any of the other ones, quite honestly. So again, you start at the 50,000-foot view, and then once we get into the college website, you're down into the nubbins and looking at specific programs and things like that. So, all right, I've blown a lot of hot air. Are there other questions? No, that
Nothing in the
generates.
chat yet. Any
Okay.
other questions, guys? Let us know what burning questions you have about college. Now is the time. Going once. How to
Oh,
tell if tuition is yearly or 4-year?
so that's a great question, Prasanthi. So when you see a published data, it's always a 1-year tuition rate. Once in a while, it's confusing because you go into the financial aid webpage and sometimes they break it down by semester. So you might have to add, the figures up or multiply it by 2 in some cases. So you kind of have to keep that into mind. But almost never will you see a college advertise a 4-year tuition rate. A lot of times because those tuition rates change year to year and go up. So good question.
So
The
for that
the
example for Trinity, was that a 90,000?
Oh, no. Trinity is, gosh, let me share the screen again. I don't remember what they listed as their sticker price.
well, almost nobody pays the sticker price at a school like Trinity.
Yeah, if you gain acceptance, the national average, like Emery makes a really good point. The national average for private liberal arts colleges is, for discount rate is about 54%. So what that means is that most of us are going to pay 54% of what they publish as their top line price. So, gosh, dang it, I'm sorry, I've lost the PowerPoint somehow. Uh, let me go over to Joe Doe here because I think that's what we need to look at. Okay, get out of here. Sorry, I have to navigate around here, guys. Okay, here we go. Let me get Joe Doe back up. Okay, here's Trinity. Okay, so their cost of attendance, which is down here, is 67, and that's a yearly figure. So, great question.
Couple more questions in the chat. Is there a deadline to apply for financial aid? I can take that one if you want, Mike.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm in the throes of still in FAFSA right now. Yeah, there is. I mean, there's 2 different kinds of financial aid. Merit-based financial aid is based on the student. The student will almost always apply for scholarships at the university when they submit their admissions application. Although a handful of schools will require you to submit a separate scholarship application in addition to the admissions application. So that's the merit side. And that's based on the kid's GPA, the SAT, ACT scores, the resume, things of that nature. Need-based aid is based on the family's income, assets, etc. The universities will determine need-based aid by the completion and submission of financial aid forms. One of them is called the FAFSA, which is kind of the granddaddy of all financial aid forms that goes to every school. Roughly 400 schools require the CSS financial aid profile. The deadlines for those financial aid forms are based on when the student applies. And so if they're applying early decision, you're going to have a much earlier financial aid forms deadline than you would if they applied regular decision, for example. So hope that answers the question. Another question, does early decision increase your chances of being accepted?
It can. Yeah, it doesn't always though. That's where that college transitions website is really helpful for me when having discussions with students. Oftentimes the answer is yes, but that bump is sometimes really small, maybe 1% or 2 or 3. Other times it could be 40% increase in chances of gaining acceptance. So you just kind of have to check the website on the historical data for different schools. And that's a really good theme, gang, is that every college is very different in terms of how they operate in the admissions cycle. And UT is definitely an odd, giant public research school. There's not very many else that act like UT. So, and they will have an early action, deadline this next cycle, which is different from how they've operated in the past. They're also going to use a waiting list, which is something that they've never done in the past. All of those tools, gang, are advantageous for the college. They use early action, early decision to screen out students and get the best possible people on the books, so to speak, early in the process. And that's why ED is so valuable to colleges. Some of them more selective schools will sometimes fill half or more of their freshman seats with early decision. So that's why early decision deadlines, early decision application admittance rates and enrollment yields are very different from regular decision admittance rates and enrollment yields. So great question. We can all get master's degrees in college enrollment. It's pretty crazy.
The last one that's on here right now is, do colleges look at unweighted or weighted GPAs during the application process?
Yeah, again, go ahead, Ambry. Sorry.
I mean, I would say when the student submits the transcript, almost always weighted and unweighted are on the transcript. And so the universities will get both generally. If a university has a specific requirement, they're going to ask you for it. But I would say most universities, in my experience, look at unweighted, but
yeah, and the truth of the matter is, gang, is that many of them, they definitely get the straight stick transcript data, which has every class we've taken, even back into 7th and 8th grade, all that into that single document. But in reality, for the more selective schools, which most of us are looking at, what they're doing is they're taking out choir, they're taking out PE, they're taking out all of the non-core kinds of classes, and essentially disaggregating the whole thing. And then also looking to see, okay, how rigorous is our high school versus, another school? And how many of those AP, IB, dual credit class, whatever, did we take advantage of? So in other words, our transcript that we think about, it's being very much either weighted or unweighted, it becomes this weird animal once it's inside the system for admissions. So they're looking at very specific things that mean something to them. And most of the time it's a disaggregated, unweighted GPA that they're evaluating.
And a lot of times they will strip away the weighting. So even if they get a weighted GPA, for 8s or something, they're going to strip away the weighting and calculate their own. Every school's different. Every school's different.
Great
Those
question.
are
So
all the questions from chat.
So I really appreciate all those. Are great questions.
That's the most fun part for us, I think, is the
Absolutely.
questions.
At first, when we started doing this years and years ago, it was the most scary part for us, but it's become the most fun part. Anyway, if you have further questions, just have your student chat them in or chat them into your students portal, and we're going to be very happy to answer those. And it's our pleasure to serve you guys through this process. If there's anything we could do, just let us know.
Thanks for being here. Love all of the audience participation.
Thanks, gang. Have a great night.
Bye, guys.